that's a great segue into the last thing I wanted to say before we let you go here, Jordan, which is that here at the Vanguard, actually, we're really inspired by your journalism, and especially at Status Coup, and exactly what you're talking about. We want to be doing more than just sitting here talking, reacting to what's going on Twitter or whatever. And we're really inspired by the intrepid backpack journalism being done by Status Coup, and obviously through years of watching your reporting, you've definitely influenced our channel here at the Vanguard, especially as we, have these plans to go forward and actually take to the streets as well in our own Sprinter van, which is why we're called the Vanguard, with a camera. We're going to report on, on the ground, on protests, whatever's going on. And as the, aforementioned censorship that we were talking about intensifies and it does become less and less financially viable to operate in the space as a journalist or a commentator, I was just wondering if, before we let you go, if you have any advice for small channels like us, that are trying to speak truth to power, that are trying to give the proletariat an accurate portrait of what's happening on the streets, versus just the, propagandistic laden message that we find on corporate media.
It's funny you mentioned a van, because the first idea I had for Status Coup that I said to Jen is, let's get like a 1980s Winnebago and soup it up and travel around. But that didn't work out. So honestly, if we would have launched, now or earlier, I do not think we would have been able, you could work 8 days a week. I don't know if we would have been able to build the audience, because at the end of the day, everybody's been talking about GameStop and that manipulation that is exposed. Well, the same type of manipulation is going on with YouTube right now.
Yeah.
Just the algorithm. I mean, they're just manipulating so that everybody's feeds is stuffed by corporate outlets, whereas the Vanguard, I'm sure you guys work night and day on this, are, fighting for like 100 live viewers. I remember those days where, it's like Christmas to get even near 100 live viewers. So I think that how I feel is, separating YouTube for a second, the most important thing you could do if you want to do in the field stuff is to find, not just go where everybody else is going. I mean, obviously everybody was going to go to Minnesota or Minneapolis when George Floyd was just executed.
Yeah.
But who's going to go to, like right now, I'm looking to go to Sycamore, Illinois. It's about 45 minutes from Chicago, because they have smelly, dirty water for like a decade and kids getting sick and all that. I would suggest, whether you guys or anybody else, find a niche that no one else is covering. For me, I'm very passionate about the water issue, but for others, it might be something entirely different. Somebody just emailed me today, very passionate about the lack of broadband in rural areas and things like that. So it doesn't mean only cover these things, but I think if you start covering stories that no one else is, or very few are, and you go to certain communities, you might have nobody watching at first, but you build sources. You build sources in those communities, and from those sources, you tend to figure out where the bodies are buried. You tend to figure out, oh, this fucking place is corrupt. That you realize, wow, this country is a lot more corrupt than I thought. And then you're able to break. Maybe you start out breaking that, the board of commissioners and bumfuck wherever. Laundered money or whatever, but you start, even on a smaller level, you start breaking things, then that stuff gets picked up by the Crystal Balls of the world or whomever. I mean, we're fighting, even though we're now breaking stories on Flint, to get the mainstream media to pay attention to it, because apparently they'll only care if you could find video of somebody pouring lead in children's drinking glasses. But my point is, I think that with this strangling that's going on in terms of YouTube and this and that, the best strategy is not just going where something's hot right now or something, whatever. It's going where nobody's covering it, because you will own that story. You will build the sources, and you have a much better shot of breaking stories. And if you break stories of corruption and injustice, I can tell you, you don't really have a lot of competition. There's nobody doing it right now. I go to these communities, I'm disgusted and stunned, because if I had a documentary filmmaker following us, I can't tell you how many places we've gone where one of the only national outlets at press conferences, where sometimes we're the only press. I remember I went to Cleveland. I was driving back from Flint, In a month's time, like 90 kids they found, black kids. They found high lead levels. An activist group was doing a press conference at City Hall. I literally was the only camera there, like me and my cameraman. Not even like the local press were there. Yeah. So you will have full reign for most of these stories because there's nobody else doing it. So that's the good part. The bad part, it's tireless. It's frustrating sometimes, including me. You're in these communities and stories and you feel like, what the fuck am I doing? This isn't doing anything. This, it's, nothing's changing. Nobody's going to jail, blah, blah, blah. But then you start to realize, you read the comments, you read the tweets, people really appreciate it and people really feel they need it. And that's what keeps me going because unfortunately, hopefully this changes at some point, but unfortunately we're not in a situation where if you expose serious corruption, it will automatically be on front pages of every newspaper around the country. That's because most corporate outlets are corrupt, and that's another discussion. However, the communities, whether it be Flint, Standing Rock, and a lot of other communities, Status Coup has been, they very much appreciate it. And I have seen firsthand that you can, we all need to eat. So we're not going to be rich doing this, so that's not the point. But you can, it's hard, but you can grow a subscription-based model for this, but you got to pick, don't pick stories that you think will hit. You have to do stories you're passionate about, and you have to connect why this story in name your area is a national story. It might be happening in some no-name town, but if you have a story in Idaho, why should I care about it in, California? Why should I care about it in Florida? So that's what I try to do. And I say just get out there because honestly, I don't mind doing a live stream and stuff, but I definitely get itchy when I can't go out there because we're all human and you get disconnected if you're sitting in your studio for too long without getting out there and covering things.
Well, Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on in this live stream and speak with us today. It was really great to get your insight, obviously, as two young, podcasters and, wannabe reporters to get out on the street and to get some insight from you was really valuable. And I'm sure our listeners really valued your time today. So just wanted to say thank you.